Hello and welcome to part 3 of my presentation of the Reeltime Recorder. Now we're finally getting to the fun part, because I've been talking about cinematic experiences with the Reeltime Recorder all the time, and now we will finally get to an example which is not just blocks moving around or falling down or whatever. It's going to be an extensive, actually such an extensive example that we won't be able to actually look through the entire example. Before we can properly get started on that example, you need to do one thing if you want to have the full experience, which is the music itself is not included in the project, and you need to drag and drop it into the project if you have it. The song is AC/DC Hell's Bells. You put that in the resources folder of the Zombies project, and then you have to open the project, go to Zombies, open the scene, and go to Timeline, and right click here, add from audio clip, and select that clip. Of course, you have to shift it all the way to the beginning. Now you're set for the full experience. It's a music video, and it is supposed to tell a little story. This is the story of Claire, a young girl who set up camp in the hinterlands somewhere in America. She appears to be oblivious to the heinous crimes committed mere feet away from her campsite. But the danger is far from over. Someone seems to be coming for her. Was there a sound? Hello? Is someone there? A zombie, and it appears the undead is in severe pain. Or perhaps it is its way to enjoy the music? Claire is unfazed by the zombie. She decides to teach him some better dance moves. The zombie follows up with a robot impression, as it better suits his demeanor. Apparently, the whole area is infested with zombies. Fortunately, they all enjoy AC/DC music a lot. Well, so much for the story. Now you can tell that this is going to be too much to cover in just an introduction to the Reeltime Recorder, so I'm going to do a whole series on how I made this, well, let's call it video, music clip if you want. But I want to highlight at least a couple of things that I did, which will show you how the Reeltime Recorder made my life easier. Now, where I didn't use it is on the timeline. On the timeline, I switch between cameras. As you can see, this is all cameras, and you can see it here in the bindings. It's only cameras switching. So whatever happens in the scene is triggered by recorded triggers. For instance, Claire has a couple of triggers: idle, 2, dancing, and is walking, which I'm not using actually. Claire has a script that is based on what is called nav agent mover. I'm sorry, it's called nav agent mover, and she already inherits that she can respond to this shoot trigger. Now the shoot trigger here is not even used for shooting, it's used for transitions to look around. You may remember that Claire got up, looked around, sat back down. That's triggered by the shoot trigger, which is already automatically recorded by this script. And then when I press a button, I get into the idle phase, standing. And if I press the same button again, I start dancing. So I called this trigger, it's also a recorded trigger, dance. So Claire basically just gets a couple of triggers, meaning the file that stores what she's supposed to do is extremely small. This is all that Claire has to do. Yeah, she has to stand up and look around twice. This is her starting position at 0, and then she stands up at 189, and she starts dancing at 204. That's it. And I introduced one more trigger so she could remember when to drop the radio. So basically that is it. And the Claire Mover script is derived from this nav agent mover, and it has very little code. But I'm not going to go into the code, like I said. We're not going to look at that. Instead, I want to show you how you can use this nav agent mover for all sorts of animations. And for that, I want to go over to that crowd of zombies here and just pick any zombie out of the crowd. Let's say this one. Okay, that's zombie number 2. And let's give him a camera. I'll show you in a moment why I'm giving him a camera. And I want this camera to look exactly, well, actually like this. Okay, so the camera is looking, and it has to be a main camera, otherwise this is not going to work. So now, of course, I don't want all these other cameras switching, which is done by the timeline, so I'm turning the timeline off. And I'm telling this zombie to not play the script, but instead do nothing. Do nothing just means don't play the script, don't record the script. So now the zombie mover, that's basically an agent mover, does nothing except respond. So if I say run, everything else is still playing, but this one zombie is now mine, and he's doing his idle animation. And if I click here, he's going to start walking to that point that I clicked on. So I can click again and click again and click again, so I can make him walk around. He walks very slowly because his the walking speed that he's using is geared to the music. It matches the music. So it looks like slow motion, which I think is great. Beautiful. Okay, now if I press the right hand button, I trigger something, a trigger called shoot. But in this case, I'm not shooting, I'm going to agony. So now at any time in this video, I can make him scream and shake his head like this, or I can make him go somewhere. So that's all this does, and that's all I wanted to tell you about this. Like I said, there's going to be a whole series on how to set up the entire scene. So that was one thing I wanted to show you, because that's part of the package, the zombie move, of course, and also the basic nav agent mover. The other thing I wanted to show you is Claire. Now Claire does very few things. She sits there, then she looks around, and then she drops the radio, and then she starts dancing. There's one little problem with this. In the animation, when she stands up, she will stand in the center of this chair, which is not so nice. So I solved this simply by giving the chair, I had to take all the colliders off, otherwise Claire would never sit in that chair. She's a nav mesh agent, and nav mesh agents will avoid things with colliders. So she would immediately be pushed away by the chair. So I had to turn all those colliders off. But how do I get the chair pushed back? Well, of course, I added a data file. This one here, Claire's chair. Oops, Claire's chair. And when she gets up, I just pull the chair back like this. At the right time, at runtime, right? I wait until she gets up and I just push back the chair. So that's where the recording comes in really handy, the transform recording. Yeah? That's actually all I have to say about this. If you want to know more, watch my other video, which will show you the full length video, and it will explain a lot more about how things were done to create the music clip. Thanks for watching and have fun with the Reeltime Recorder.